a sepulchre by the sea. You want more? I have to look it up. They always say test the microphone, then you go test, test, test. So I thought I need a poem. So I picked that one. We have 5 minutes before we start. Somehow people in Bangkok managed to arrive to the minute. I don't know how you do it. I'm always an hour early. If I go anywhere in Bangkok, I make sure I'm an hour early. Just because you never know.
The bus might not pick you up.
Yes. I was in my place many years ago now, but in Thonburi, and I had a live TV show to do in Lat Pral. It's about 15 miles, and it's my first ever live TV show. I was quite excited. So I thought, I'm not going to be late, and I left at 1 o'clock. The show starts at 7. I've got 6 hours. Didn't make it. Just horrendous rain, and there was some royal procession was passing by, and they blocked the roads, and they just never unblocked. And there's 2 of us, and we just didn't make it. I was furious. I can get from London to Paris in 6 hours. I didn't even make it halfway across Bangkok. There was no sky train at that time on my side of the river. Yeah. Funny though, just for Thai people, if I had a live TV show and my guest didn't arrive, I'd be pretty annoyed. But when we got there, it was about 8 o'clock we arrived there, they were like, oh, don't worry, we just did something else. Just might be right. So, anyway, they didn't invite me back, so there's that. And there's the time I did a live radio show, a big mistake. This is at Puta Monton, the big Buddhist park. And I didn't know what to expect, but they just kind of shoved me in this room, and there was this Thai monk. He doesn't speak a lick of English. And the show is going out live in Thai. And I wasn't expecting to speak Thai, and I wasn't prepared. And my Thai it's not bad if I warm up for a few days. And then he'd asked me a question, and I just fluffed, because I just couldn't think in Thai. And I was saying the most ridiculous, stupid things. And he said to me, what do you think about our Prime Minister? At that time I think he was still Thaksin at the time. And 1, I have to be careful. But 2, I don't know. I don't know what I think about the Prime Minister. So I tried to say, I find it hard to just organize stuff in my room. I put things down and I lose it, and my room is 4 meters by 3 meters. How do you run a country? That's what I was trying to say, but it came out just in a garbled piece of nonsense. And this Thai monk was really good, and he said, he said, that's very wise. I think what Venerable Pandit is saying. And then he'd say something completely different that was quite good, and I was like, chai, 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 that was it, that's what I was trying to say. This went on for 3 hours. Like, I was just drenched with sweat, like, please, God, get me out of here. He never invited me back either. One live TV show, it was with a famous Abhidhamma teacher in Thailand, and I never rated her particularly myself, but she knows her stuff. But she gave a very good answer. Somebody called up on her show and said, when we go to sleep at night, should we sleep with the lights on or the lights off? What do you think? I thought it was really good. She said something like, good grief, what on earth are you asking me such a dumb question for? I don't know. What's that got to do with enlightenment? You want the lights on, sleep with the lights on. If you want the lights off, sleep with the lights off. Next question. That was quite a good, fair enough answer. People ask you, if you're in a position that you know stuff, then people ask you about stuff that you don't know about or you're not qualified to talk about. And this happens a lot with monks. They kind of assume if we know about Buddhism, we must know about everything. And so people ask things like about relationships. What do I do about my husband or my wife? Why are you asking me? Like the person with the least experience, probably in Bangkok, about relations. Don't ask questions like that. Then you have the opposite problem as monks dishing out advice on things that they have no business talking about. Like psychology, usually. Dishing out advice about COVID vaccines, and I like to dish out advice about global warming. But yeah, I'm not qualified. So it's that question, Einstein may be very clever, but you don't ask him about raising your children. Okay, it's 6:30. We're going to start. So, has anybody here never meditated before? You've all done some meditation. Good. So we're going to sit together for 30 minutes or so, have some Dhamma reflection for 30 minutes or so, and then some time for questions, and we will finish before 8 o'clock, guaranteed.
2 minutes.
2 minutes before 8 o'clock. Or earlier. Okay, so settle yourself into your favored meditation posture. If you are accustomed to meditation, do go ahead with that system you are practiced with. If you are new to meditation, I would recommend you find the sensation of the breathing as it comes through the center of the body, comes down in front of the spine. Follow the physical sensation of the breath. Sure, the air splits up and passes into lungs somewhere at the back of the torso. But the physical sensation of the breathing runs straight down the center of the body, down to the seat. You may follow this breath as it runs up and down, or you may stop the attention still while the breathing runs by. Be sure to have body awareness. Tie your attention down to the breath. It's a neutral object of attention. It's not pleasant, it's not unpleasant. Training yourself one breath at a time to be able to sit with the mind peacefully, mindfully breathing. The feeling of the breath is always present, so it's a good meditation object. What you are doing is focusing attention onto this thing, not all other things. From time to time your mind will wander away from the object. When you realize your mind has wandered away, make a note. Where did your attention wander to? Did it go to thinking? Did it go to remembering? Did it go to worrying? Did it go to hearing? Did it go to feeling in the body? So you make a note. Feeling, feeling. Thinking, thinking. Hearing, hearing. Don't worry too much about the label. It's just to aid mindfulness. Bring attention back to the meditation object. 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times. It's a lifelong practice. For those of you with experience in meditation, note that when attention lands on anything, a thought, a worry, a feeling, a sound, past, present, future, coarse or refined, internal or external, it's still just the mind, still just attention fixing to an object of focus. Consciousness springs up with that object. The mind reacts, likes, it dislikes, gets attached, wants to get, wants to avoid. When attention lands on an object, it fires into being this whole process of conscious awareness. Consciousness arises with the object, ceases with the object, moves to the next object, one thing after another thing, after another thing. Note that even the breath, even your meditation object, is still just another object of focus. Therefore, you hold the mind in restraint. Don't allow attention to get caught up with any object, including the meditation object. All that you see, hear, taste, smell, feel or think. It's just attention moving around like a spotlight, landing on this, landing on that. Hold attention in restraint. Feel the difference when you are lost or caught in something and when awareness has returned. That returning awareness is bright. You hold on to this mindful attention. The attention should return to the body. When the mind isn't going to any object, isn't creating consciousness around any object, a body awareness will arise that's quite pleasant. Consciousness diffuse or suffused through the body. A generalized awareness, not feeling the knee or the breath or the inside or the outside, just a general body awareness. If this happens, then you move to that pleasant body sensation, that buzzing, gentle vibration of the body. Not allowing your mind, not allowing attention to land on anything. This awareness will coalesce into brightness. as attention becomes bright, you may feel that energization come through the body, vibrant alertness. This pleasant sensation, this rapture, it's good. Find when it coalesces and when it dissipates. Examine when your mind or when attention goes to something. This piti, this rapture dissipates. When the attention remembers itself, then this rapture increases. Don't be confused. This pleasant feeling or happiness feeling is to be cultivated. It's not based on sense impressions. You may find that consciousness becomes bright. You may find it becomes very empty. You may find the body becomes very large, or attention, consciousness becomes diffuse through the body. All these are the correct experiences. The mind is starting to exit from maya, from delusion. As always, meditation, start from where you are. Don't start with an idea of what you want to attain to. Sometimes we'll be tired, sometimes there will be thinking, sometimes there will be dullness, sometimes a lack of enthusiasm. All these things are the joys and tribulations of being a meditator. So we're going to sit together for another 15 minutes or so. Bring your attention together. Make your mind as bright and as still as you can. Take a few moments for the sharing of merits. That is, you dedicate your meditation and any goodness that arises from it to the welfare of all world beings. Our meditation is not just for ourselves, but to dedicate to brighten, to encourage, to share merits with all beings, from heavenly realms, ghost realms, human, animal, hell realms, whatever beings there may be anywhere. May they be happy, peaceful, free from suffering. Sabbe buddha balapatta pachekanancha yang balang arahanta nancha tejena rakang bandami sabbhaso sabbabuddha nupavena sattha soti bhakvantu te. Sabbe buddha balapatta pachekanancha yang balang arahanta nancha tejena rakang bandami sabbhaso Sabbadhammanubhavena sattha soti bhakvantu te. Sabbe buddha balapatta pachekanancha yang balang arahanta nancha te jena rakang bandami sabbhaso sabbasanghanubhavena sattha soti bhakvantu te. Okay. Last week I talked a bit about Maya, delusion, the delusionary fabricated world that we live in, and how to exit it and focus on the meditation object. I'm going to go over that at an accelerated pace this week, and then talk just briefly about using a meditation object, and then I want to get into some of the, I don't know, say higher states or advanced, I don't like these terms, but some of the signposts for when meditation is heading in the right direction. Very much because when I was practicing myself, I didn't have good teachers who could outline these things. A few teachers I had were very good on pseudo-psychology, letting go of anger, being peaceful, reflections on things like forgiveness or precepts. It's all good stuff. Then I had another set of teachers who are in highly advanced states with all kinds of psychic powers and psychic experiences, and just way beyond what I could understand, and they're not able to articulate what you do to get there. So in between these two extremes, nobody really talks about. So Maya, delusion, the delusionary world, in brief. When you are a child, a baby, you're hit with a wall of colour, a wall of sound, and a wall of feeling, all mixed together. It takes some time to start to differentiate objects. So out of this wall of colour comes my mother's face, comes a rattle or a toy. Start to distinguish different objects. So the baby, the child, will start to pull objects out of the world around them, different sounds, different feelings. They have a feeling of pleasant and unpleasant. So they get food and it feels pleasant. Drawing in food from the mouth. Freud said this becomes a oral, retentive, oral expletive personality type. I'm not sure I believe Freud too much on these things. That's pleasant, taking in food. If you're the right temperature is pleasant, and then when you want to poop, you want to pee, that's an unpleasant feeling, so the baby cries and finds relief. So a child will start to distinguish certain objects, certain feelings. After a period of time, if you hide an object from the baby, it doesn't know the object is there. You can do this experiment. After a while, the baby starts to realize objects are still there, whether they can sense it or not. They know that mother is still around, father is still around. If I cry, maybe they'll come to me and give me a blanket or food or something that I want. So they get the impression, start to get the impression objects are still there when they can't sense them. Cats will do this. If you play with a cat with a toy and it's interested in the toy, but you put that toy behind a newspaper or behind a piece of cloth, it gets even more interested because it knows the object is there even though it can't sense it. So we gain this ability to form objects in our mind, not just in the world around us. This is the start of our conceptual universe. After some time, we start to be able to manipulate concepts in our own conceptual universe and work things out. Work out numbers, purely mathematic, purely in the head. 2 plus 4, we get trained in these things. Start to manipulate concepts and ideas. Not many animals can do this. Humans, quite special. We can create whole universes. We can do trial and error experiments on things without touching them. We can figure out that the square block goes in the square hole and the round thing goes in the round hole. So we can manipulate things in this conceptual world. However, what happens as you get older and older, you will spend more and more time in your conceptual universe rather than the real world. If you remember, as a child, I was a child of the 70s. After lunch, my mother would stick me on the bike, shove me out the driveway and tell me not to come back until dinner time. And a bike was enough, right? Just going around on the bike with a couple of friends, learning how to do skids. I learned how to bump my bike up on curbs, the physical world. But as you get older, you get more and more drawn into this conceptual universe until it starts to become obsessive. Inside this conceptual universe is also a conception of your own self. So the I, the ego, the fabricated self, is also another concept that you've put into this conceptual universe, and then worry about it. I do that when I'm walking down here. I walk down from Morchit, and people look at me, think I'm a bit weird. Sometimes the foreigners look at me like, what's a foreigner doing as a monk? Sometimes the Thais, why? Pay respect, say hello. And then I react, like, why are they looking at me? Do I like it? Do I dislike it? I just want to walk without anybody noticing me. I don't like attention. That's an I that I've created inside this universe, and then I worry about, I attribute qualities to. If you put down the thinking, the conceptualizing, you can just walk without reacting, without needing to have attention or not have attention. This is a maya, delusion. As you meditate, as you sit and watch your breath, or use whatever meditation object you're accustomed to, what happens? You say in breath, in breath, what's for dinner? What shall I eat? I had this yesterday, I need to buy this, oh, I need to fix the refrigerator. Oh, in breath, out breath, that's right. Then I need to get my visa, I need to do something or other. Elon Musk has just backed Donald Trump for president. Taylor Swift has just backed Kamala Harris for president. Thoughts occur to you, and when these thoughts come in, they grab your attention, right? And you are lost. You've forgotten about your meditation object, and you are lost for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes. Your lovely, delicious, conceptual universe. If you had more suffering as a child, you will have a tendency to withdraw into this imaginary fantasy, conceptual universe more than other people. If you are an extrovert, you will tend to be more active, more vibrant, more immediate with your environment. For me, I'm an introvert, unhappy childhood. The only place that I could find happiness was I draw my attention in and I can create this world of things. I'm quite happy in my little universe. Many monks are like this. We can just stay in our room for weeks or months. I was just in Canada. They were complaining to me. The previous monk who was there, he wasn't very communicative. So people would go and take him food at 11 o'clock, and they knock on his door, and he opens his door, and he'd take the food, nod, and close the door. They were complaining that he wouldn't come out and talk to them, at least. So we're like that, monks. We like to we can stay in our own little universe. So these are your concepts, your fantasies, your stories that you will live in. And happiness then becomes how I can set up a nice set of stories in my mind. How I can solve global warming, how I can solve governments and government policies. Britain has a new government right now. They're not doing very well. How I can solve different things. For me, I like engineering. I like building things. And even ChatGPT has got a bit sick of me asking questions about engineering. So this conceptual universe that you retreat into, you see it when you meditate, because your mind will lose self-awareness and go into the thinking. You've all experienced this, right? You sat there and tried to meditate, tried to watch my breath, and then you're gone. You're thinking about stuff, creating stories, working things out, fixing things. If you're a depressive tendency, character, in Pali Buddhism, it's called dosa, you will tend to fixate on the past. These things were said to me, done to me, I should have said this, I should have done that. If you are a greed-based character, lopa in the Pali, you will be fixated on the future. I want to get this, I want to get that, I want to create things, fix things. If you are a moha-based character, it means delusion, means you just like nonsense. You just want to disappear into nonsense. YouTube, newspapers, conversations with friends. Do you ever listen to other people's conversations? You see how crazy dumb they are? Boring, about just telling each other what they ate for breakfast, or I got into a conversation with somebody about, you know, Dr. Pepper, the drink? They don't really have it in England, so it was a special thing for me as a kid if you found a shop that sold Dr. Pepper. We had dandelion and burdock. That's what Americans never had. So. Now they have a black licorice Dr. Pepper. Man, I want it so badly. What's happened? My attention lands on this thing. Now I want it. I start fall into that thought. I've lost self-awareness. I like big phones, and I used to have a 7.6-inch Lenovo. It really fitted in my hand nicely, and then it died one day, and I couldn't get a big phone. I got a Motorola, but it's too small. So I keep looking for a big phone. And then I found one, a Huawei 7.2 inch. I was like so excited. I took myself off to the MBK. No Huawei. I found out later they stopped making them. But somehow Facebook had figured out, over listening in on my conversations or spying on my Google searches, and then I went onto Facebook one day and it throws up this second-hand 7.2 inch Huawei Mate 20X. I want it. What's happened? This thing has just come into my attention. 3 seconds before Facebook gave me that picture, Huawei second-hand, you buy them second-hand. 3 seconds before Facebook did that, I had no desire for that phone. Literally, my attention lands on something and sparks up this firework display of liking, disliking, wanting, not wanting, being absorbed in the object, attachment, becoming. This is called, in Buddhism, dependent origination, paticca samuppada in Thai, paticca samuppada in Pali. Means when something comes into attention, your stories start to create around that thing. So do I want this 7.2 inch phone or not? I'm thinking, a split second ago I had no desire in it. Now Facebook has shoved that picture in my face. I really want it. I turn it off. Next thing. Cat fails. That'll get me every time. Boop. Now I'm watching the cats failing to, when they try and jump somewhere and their feet slip. It's terrific. Now the phone is completely gone. Where is that desire for my 7.2 inch? It's disappeared. It's gone. I'm not wanting it anymore. If you're not mindful, you think to yourself, I want it. You create that concept and you consider that wanting to always be there. It's not always there. It's a concept in your conceptual universe. So, as a meditation, you learn to start to break free from the conceptual world. You note when your mind gets lost in thinking about something and when your attention has come back. Note this very clearly because this is the key to advanced states of meditation. Initially, when you meditate, you fix attention onto a meditation object, a mantra, light, sounds, om. I don't know what people... You can use Coca-Cola if you want. A visualization, Buddha image. Whatever you're doing, all you're doing is fixing attention onto this thing rather than everything else. Eventually the question should arise. What is the advantage with fixing on this thing, on my breath or something, rather than why did Taylor Swift back Kamala Harris for president? Would a 7.2 inch phone really be good for me? Then you start thinking about it. Because they're second-hand, these Huawei phones, they're only 4G. I thought, if I need a phone, I'm going to get 5G. Little conceptual stuff, working out, liking it, disliking it, creating stories. So your attention, you tie your attention to a meditation object, but after some time you should start to see that even the meditation object is just another focus of attention. So then you draw the distinction. When is my mind getting lost or caught into something? Storytelling, you can call it. I like to call it. For example, you're sitting here, somebody comes in late, they clang the door, your attention gets caught by the sound. What's happened? Your attention has turned and now is on that sound. Now, if you don't care about the sound, your attention will quickly come back. But if you're waiting for somebody, you turn around, is it my friend? Are they too noisy? Is this person coughing? Who are they? Your attention is now caught in that story about the sound. It's triggered by the sound, you get into the storytelling, conceptual universe, then you come back, oh, my knee hurts. Now you're caught in the story about your knee. Is this your experience in meditation? Your attention gets caught by something, boom. You lose awareness of yourself for a minute, 2 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour. How long can you go lost and caught in a story before your attention comes back? Note the difference between when you are lost and when your attention is back. Call that attention brightness. I know it might not be experienced as bright yet. It will later on. Hang on to that awareness where attention is not getting lost or caught in anything. Hang on to that for dear life. This will start to then extract you, take you past the need for meditation objects to focus on, and start to pull you into some of these states that are talked about in suttas and different meditation manuals. One of the first things that starts to appear is you get a sense of I, a sense of yourself intensifies. I was disappointed of this because I thought advanced meditation states would be, poof, I'm gone, and I'm with some bright light or psychic power or phenomenon, and that I could spend a week or a day or something lost in this state of mind and then come back only just to brush my teeth, eat, and then poof, I could be gone again. I read a book of a man in Sri Lanka. He used to do this. He was doing Goenka style meditation, and he was living in a cave in Sri Lanka, and he would get into these, they're called arupa jhana states, formless meditation, and he'd sit and boom, he's gone. His main actual life was just once a day he'd brush his teeth and go down and get some food. I thought, yes, that's me. I don't want to be in this world. I want to be gone. So, yeah, that was wrong. When you are gone, that is getting lost or caught in Maya, delusion, your storytelling conceptual universe. When you're present, there is an intensified sense of I, an intensified sense of self. Don't get confused with non-self in Buddhism. I don't want to go into it too much unless you ask a question about it, but non-self applies to sensory input. So if I hear a sound, that's not me. If I feel a feeling in the body, that's not me. Because that feeling has just arisen and it's about to disappear. Because attention moves from thing to thing to thing. So don't get confused with non-self. The sense of your own presence should intensify. Now, I don't like to go to the Bible too much, but there are some really good statements in the Bible, of course. One of the statements was, God said, I am that I am. Stuck in my head for a long time, I never understood it, but now I know that I amness right there, that's where the ego self, the little self, the conceptual self disappears. Worrying about me and my things, my age, my gender, saw this old man on YouTube. He said, I'm 74 years old. He said, in America, men live to be an average of 76 years old. Women live to an average age of 81. So I think I'm going to change my gender. It's quite good. My gender, my age, my nationality, my thoughts, my concepts, my everything, all that lives in Maya, in delusion. This I am is a stark, clear presence. And this is important because when the mind is not going out to anything, this sense of self starts to increase and intensify. And nobody told me that. I just assumed, well, this is just body or this is just ego arising, and I have to let go of that too and go back to my meditation object. And what's happening is the mind is attaining in the correct way, and you're ditching it and going back to a coarse, unrefined meditation object that is just looking at my breath or light or sound or mantra or whatever it is. Am I clear enough? If these things don't make sense to you, don't worry, because my intention is I want to put the information out there. So when these things do occur to you, you can say, oh, that's it. That's the thing. You get some kind of navigation. This intensifies, and you hit a point where the mind is going, you notice that, like, I'm thinking about my phone, I'm thinking about my visa, now I'm remembering something from my childhood, now I've heard something outside, now there's, and you see your attention go boom, 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 moving from thing to thing to thing. You've exited the conceptual universe because you're not getting drawn into anything, but the mind is still boom, 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 onto this thing, this thing, this thing, like a conveyor belt of objects to pay attention to. And there comes a moment where you hit solid ground. Just, you can just hold attention. Sounds may come, they're not going to get you. Thoughts may come, they're not going to get you. You have this evenness of self-knowing, if you like. This is called first jhana, applied and sustained attention. In Buddhism, the four jhanas that I want to talk about, states of concentration. But monks have to be a bit careful when we talk about this. We can't claim to have attainments. That's against our rules. But also there are no signposts. So you never, if you start thinking about four particular states, then you start wondering, well, which state am I in? Ajahn Chah had a good answer to this. Somebody said to him, how do I know which jhana I'm in? And Luang Por Chah said, "Mai lu, mai mi pai," means there are no signposts. So I want to talk about what it feels like. So these feelings that you can start to know. The hitting upon solid ground means your attention becomes even. Thoughts may be there at this point, sounds may be there, they will not be able to get your attention. You will not get lost in them or caught up in them. Your attention is even. At this point you have an intensified sense of self, and consciousness becomes suffused through the body. So you have a feeling of yourself sitting here. Bring attention in from the eyes. It's quite important to bring light into the meditation. Bring attention from the eyes and down into the body. You feel the buzzing, humming, generalized consciousness through the body. The Buddha described it as like honey mixed with flour. And they would make these honey balls. They still have them, these Indian sweets, you know, the really sickly things. I remember the first time I had them and someone brought me one and I said, "Are you crazy? I only eat once a day. Bring me 5 of them." And then I ate one, I'm like, man, that's enough. You know, what's the word? I don't know what they're called. The brown flour with syrup. Anyway, so in the sutras it's called a honey ball. and the honey is mixed with the flour into a ball. The honey is suffused and throughout the entire ball of flour. He said in the same way, consciousness becomes suffused through the body. You can feel this and attain to this. Don't think that these are advanced states. Advanced states are when you use concentration to create something in your mind. These are your natural states that start to appear when you stop doing, when you climb out of the conceptual universe. This is you yourself, before your identity, your name and your age and your gender and your nationality and your politics and your music and your ducted fans. Yeah. So the attention becomes sustained and constant. You may lose it. You can feel when you're losing it and you're getting drawn into the conceptual world. You can feel it when it's strengthening and coming back. This in Buddhist parlance is called first jhana, or concentration state. Note, there are two kinds of concentration that we talk about. Concentration with an object and concentration without an object. Concentration with an object means you put attention onto this thing to the exclusion of all other things. So we could use this Buddha image. You can visualize it, concentrate on it, force all your thinking to come back to it, and after a while it will start to appear very strongly in the mind, and you can clamp the mind down on it. This is concentration on an object. The characteristic of this kind of jhana concentration is you don't know any other thing. You don't know the passage of time. You don't know yourself or non-self. You're not able to contemplate. You're simply locked into that one thing until your concentration runs out of steam, and then you're back to where you were. That's concentration on an object. And if you look on YouTube for people that teach these states, some people teach that. I'm advising you that that's not the best way to go, but I don't have much experience with it myself, because I just hated having to work in meditation. You have to work so hard to force your attention onto the object. And I didn't want to do that. My mind wants to stop doing things. It doesn't want to work really hard. So the kind of concentration you find in the sutras does not have an object. It simply says the mind gets applied and sustained attention. One of the signposts is attention becomes suffused throughout the body, becomes even. Another is you're constantly aware of yourself, constantly aware if you start to lapse into the conceptual storytelling, and when you are not in the storytelling. There is a gathering of power, of energy, of force. Starts to feel powerful. I always wonder, can I zap somebody or do something? Can I send psychic messages to people? Can I heal people? I always wonder what you can do, but the feeling is one of a gathering of energy, gathering of power. The actual words the Buddha used was gathering of consciousness, unification, and a centrification. You get centered, unified, and the energy is gathered together. One analogy that he gave was like a spring where the water comes up from the ground and the water runs off in 6 different directions. He said if you were to build a wall around that spring, the water would come up and it can't escape in 6 different directions, so the water accumulates so that a crow could come and drink from it. Now that means the water is of use. He said in the same way, your consciousness leaks away in sounds, smells, taste, touch, feeling, thoughts. Don't allow the mind to go leaking away onto anything. Attention doesn't land onto any object. You are self-aware, self-present, clear, awake. So the forces gather. There is a piti, it's called piti or rapture, starts to arise. And this is if you picture the feeling through the body, this condenses into the center of the body. It's a physical intensification. This rapture will come through the body. Again, you can feel what you do to intensify it and what you do to lose it. What you do to lose it is something comes into attention, a thought, a memory, a sound, a feeling. You've got to start thinking about that thing, that object. Your attention has now landed onto something and is drawn away. When the mind isn't drawn away, this intensification starts to happen. It feels pleasant. Now, a lot of Buddhist teachers will tell you, when you experience pleasant or unpleasant, you simply note pleasant or unpleasant and come back to your meditation object. This is not really correct. If your attention goes to a 7.2-inch Huawei Mate 20X phone, and you feel, I want it, that's pleasant. That you need to withdraw the mind from, for a meditator. If your mind goes to, I don't know what people like, Marmite, toast. Oh, come on. Remember we had Annie Zamba, you remember her? You know, she died a couple of years ago. Yeah, she passed away. She said to the audience, now imagine the most beautiful, intense experience that you've ever had, the happiest, most pleasant experience. Imagine it, call it back to mind. And I said to her, you know what I'm thinking of, don't you? She went, how do I know what you're thinking? Marmite. And she was right, it was Marmite. So that is pleasure that comes from landing your attention onto something, creating a story. You get lost or caught into it. The piti, the rapture, which is pleasant, arises because the mind is not landing on any object. Attention isn't going to anything. That happiness you can indulge in. That's not something that you note pleasant, pleasant, and come back to your meditation object. It means you're attaining in the right way. So this intensification happens. That would be second jhana if we're looking at signposts. Again, don't count these things as 1, 2, 3, 4 as separate, distinct. It's just you as you start to intensify and come back to yourself. A happiness can arise. Happiness, which is my friend Marissa, if you know, she mentioned, she described it as like smoking a cigar. I think, I don't know, maybe it's American culture, but if you've done something really good, you've won a race or something, or you just backed Juliana Pena to beat Raquel Pennington in the MMA on Saturday, and you won $1 million, you kind of have that cigar moment. It's just like, just happy, just. So she described it that way. I don't know if that makes sense. It made sense to me when she told me. A happiness can arise, and the happiness is a contentment. It's a happiness because the mind doesn't need anything. Consciousness by itself is pristine, it's self-fulfilling and self-happy. Becomes clear, the insight becomes clear. I don't need to add anything to this to make it better. I always find that when they have products that they add things to try and make it sell better. And I always think that it makes it worse. My favourite example, someone in Hawaii, they gave me this soap, and it has oatmeal in the soap. Like, how does oatmeal make the soap better? I just want soap. I don't want perfume. I don't want aloe vera in my soap. And I don't want oats in my soap, just as much as I don't want soap in my oatmeal. the idea that you add something makes it better and better is wrong. So consciousness by itself doesn't need anything added to it. You don't need an idea, a thought, a concept. You don't need to win elections, gain money, win bets. You don't need your football team to win the World Cup. Consciousness by itself is just, it's right. But you have to purify. Step out of Maya delusion. Also, equanimity can arise, which is, there's nothing left to do. It can get very boring. I was talking to someone, he goes into this state regularly, has a lot of strange experiences, but he's saying, yeah, it's a bit boring. I want to get back to my biti, my rapture. So these are some of the states that can arise as you advance in meditation. Notice them if they start to arise for you, because meditation teachers will put you wrong, and they'll say that's just biti, or that's just happiness, or that's just brightness. Come back to your meditation object. And you have this intuition, my meditation object is coarse and unrefined compared to the consciousness that is purified. If this happens, trust your instinct. One woman I was talking to, and she would go into these jhana experiences but focused on an object. And I think she was using her breath. And I told her, you don't need an object for breath. And then, oomph, she's got into all these really refined, pure states. She kept coming back for meditation. She said she couldn't do it at home, so she'd come like 3 days a week to the place where I was staying, and then just sit there, blissed out. I was a bit jealous because I can't do it that well. Another thing to note, when you've touched upon this purified consciousness, it feels right. You have this insight that this is the path. You also get a confidence that you have touched it, you know where it is, and you know it's there. So on the days where you can't touch it, when the mind will not cooperate, then you still have this confidence that you know it's there, you just keep working. This happens a lot. Some days you just can't bring the mind together. Some days you just can't stop thinking. Your concepts will grab your attention, you get lost. This happened to me. I remember it was 10 years I'd been as a monk, and every time I'd sit, just my mind is gone. Just literally the second, I could feel it going, and then it's gone, and it just, because it's hot, there's no air conditioning, I had no duties in the temple, staying in my room, I can meditate now, or I can meditate later, or I can meditate tomorrow. So I wasn't putting in any effort. I had no urgency. I didn't know how to break out of it, this conceptual maya that would just suck me in a split second. So I took to slapping myself in the face. I'm like, 10 years as a monk, is that all you can do? No, I'm not recommending that, but you do have to find ways. You find your own ways. You find your own triggers to do this. Here's another insight that arises. This does not depend on your religion, Mahayana, Vajrayana, Theravada, Christian mystic, Sufi mystic. It's all irrelevant. This is the architecture of consciousness. Your triggers to get into this may vary. So the Spanish mystics would have this thing, awareness of presence of God. Yeah, I guess you need a strong idea of what God is, but if you have that and you imagine God's there in front of you, your mind's not going to be wandering off into different things. I don't know, your triggers to get there may vary. You find your own little ways. I have a way right now, again, not recommending this as a meditation object. But I just imagine myself holding a very small light like this, and I can roll it in my fingers. And then I do that, and then I remember. But that's not a meditation method. I'm not suggesting you, because if you try that, you're going to conceptualize it. So that's not it. So you find your triggers, you find your ways, you find your confidence. Last thing that I'll say, as you go into these states, there should be a feeling of familiarity. This is not a new thing that you are attaining to. This is what you were all along. This is what has been present for you right throughout everything. So you have a feeling of familiar, coming onto familiar ground. Very often remembering childhood experiences. As a child, you could naturally attain to a lot of these things. As an adult, you get too much thinking. We found this in the temple where I ordained up country, and a lot of the children could attain to very high states of concentration, insight, even psychic powers. And then they lose it as they get to 14 years old, 15. They get interested in girls, get interested in football. The conceptual universe will take over, and they lose their meditation. That's all right. They'll come back to it at some point. Ajahn Pasano had this story of a young man who had these attainments as a child in the monastery. And he found a very bright light in the center of his body. Another one of the experiences, you find this bright light in the center of your body or the center of your head. If this happens, you go into the center of that light. And then he lost his meditation as he got older. And then he got a visa, he went to America, he hooked up with some Thais. They were stealing stuff. He was driving the getaway car. Somebody got killed in the factory, where the place that they were robbing. The police caught him because he still sat in the car. He wouldn't give the names of the other people, and they sentenced him to death. And Ajahn Pasano was actually his advisor in his last weeks of life before he was executed. Anyway, he went back to this meditation that he'd had as a child, remembering that. So, again, not recommending that you get a death sentence in America, but one of the things that you feel is that sense of familiarity and things that you knew as a child. So I'm going to leave it there. Some of the signposts and indicators for when you can drop your meditation object and move into these states. Is it clear enough?
Are you prepared to take questions?
Go ahead. Right. No, the piti is not another feeling. When we talk about feeling of liking or disliking, that refers to sensory input. So if I eat toast with Marmite, I get a pleasant feeling in my tummy. That's a pleasant feeling, right? There's a feeling that's arisen depending upon that sense contact. The piti arises because the mind isn't going out to anything. The Buddha said, this happiness I will indulge. Or another time to a man called Margandia, he said, imagine a leper with sores on the skin, sores and boils on the skin. He would scratch at those sores and boils and would gain some kind of satisfaction at scratching himself. However, if someone were to give him medicine and he were to be cured of this skin disease, he would no longer need to try to gain happiness through scratching at his skin. He would be past that. Buddha said, in the same way, you get past that happiness of sensitized, you get past it because you know something that is better and more refined. So that happiness, that rapture, piti, that is something that you should use as an indicator that you're meditating in the right way. And you know that it intensifies and condenses when the mind stops going out to anything. Very important, because meditation teachers will tell you that's just pleasant feeling, note pleasant, pleasant, and go back to your meditation object. You've already gone past the need for a meditation object. So no, intensify it.
So basically, it's the end goal of meditation practice, particularly to just get that rapture feeling and just to stay in.
It's not the end goal, no. It's second jhana, or second level of concentration. From these, this is in what's called the Jhana Sutta, from each of these states, the Buddha said you can attain liberation from each one of these states. So, in the state you note, okay, and the mind can move because you're not concentrating on an object. When you're in that state, you feel when something comes in to get your attention. So a sound comes in or a thought comes in, you can feel it. And then you reflect on it. That thing now, if I get drawn into it, is unstable, it's alien. I like that. It's not me, it's alien. He said it's a boil, a dart, a saw, something unpleasant compared to this. So he fixes attention onto the deathless element. Amatat Dhatu is called in the Pali. What this means is the mind knows that stillness that lies beyond attention landing onto objects and creating consciousness. That's the route of liberation. Now you can do this from any one of these various jhana states, according to the Buddha. You can look it up, Jhana Sutta, you can look it up. So, no, the rapture isn't the goal, it's a signpost that you're purifying consciousness. Yeah. Also, if you want it, that wanting is going to unpurify, it's going to sully your meditation, just the wanting of it. So you have that little dance with it. Yeah. Because I want my piti, I want my rapture. I was sat for an hour and a half this morning, I just couldn't bring my mind together. And then I went for lunch and chanting, and I came back, and then I could start to purify. I was like, oh, that's right. But if you start with wanting something, you always start meditation from where you are at. This mind is what's real, not from something you want to attain to.
Related to this, two questions actually. One is about effort. You mentioned effort. Does effort help, or isn't effort, because it's directed, counterproductive? So do I need effort? Do I need to put effort into my meditation, or should I actually not? Because I would assume that effort is directed somehow, and therefore leading to wanting.
Okay, and the next one, next question.
The next one was, you mentioned a few times now psychic powers, which is intriguing. I would like to understand what you mean by that.
Please repeat the question.
So, first question, what about making an effort? So normal effort is an effort of conceptualization, to think something up. This is an effort of restraint, not letting the mind go out to anything. So it's an effort of restraint, not an effort of attaining to. The Buddha said you should put in effort, virya. Virya means heroic struggle. It's not just effort, you've got a heroic effort. Like a person whose hair is on fire, they would put forth effort to extinguish that fire. So that's how much effort you should be putting in. Note that effort of restraint, you need to find this dance, because there does come a point where if it turns into wanting, like I want my rapture, then it's going to be a hindrance to you. So the effort, you have to learn how to put the effort in the right way. But the effort is one of restraining and coalescing, not an effort of calling up a mantra or a visualization or a thought or the breath or something like that. So yes, you have to make a huge effort. The effort will lighten as you do it. This one teacher I went to see, I wanted to ask him about something and he wasn't interested. And then, this is Ajahn Brahmot, Thai people will know him. And then I asked him this question and he just batted me off, like not interested. So I was like, fair enough. And I went into my meditation. And then he said, I opened my eyes and he was pointing at me. He said, you just made your body very bright. Do that again. And at this point my hair stand on end, like, ugh. Okay, I'll try. He said, no, you must never try. If you're trying, you're not doing it. He knows his stuff, but he's wrong. You do have to try. If you're attained already, you don't need to make any effort, because effort is going in the wrong direction. But when you're on this side of enlightenment, you do need to make an effort. Otherwise, if I don't make an effort, I just sit there dreaming. And I can do that for months. Just easy. So effort, you have to make an effort. And then second question. Oh, the psychic powers. Yeah, I don't have psychic powers, so I'm not on familiar ground, but knowing the mind of another person, not knowing their personality, that's your conceptual nonsense. You can know what's there at that moment, right? Some people want a teacher who's going to look into their psyche and their past and work something out and give them no. All they know is what's in your head or being at that moment. And seeing the level of advancement or purification of other beings, sending the mind-made body out, seeing heavens and hells, heavenly beings down to hell beings, and seeing the karma that they've done to be born there. People teach this stuff. Several of my teachers do this and they teach it. Trouble is, you have to have all the attainments to get there, which wasn't very much use for me. So these things are quite well listed in the suttas. Obviously, they're a distraction, right? You don't want to be sending the mind out to different things. So my teacher would say when these things start to occur, he said you just go to the center of the center of the center of the center. You don't get distracted. There was one time this guy was meditating and then we'd finished the meditation and he came up to me afterwards and he said, yeah, I could see this sphere of light in the center of my body. He said, so I was playing around with it and then I called the abbot into the center of it and he appeared in the center of it. And then he vanished from it. And he said, and I kept calling him and he wouldn't come back, couldn't get him back into the sphere of light. And I was going, all right. Anyway, a little novice comes over at that point. My Thai is reasonable at this point. So the novice speaks to me in Thai. He said, the abbot wants you to tell him, stop playing around with the sphere, just observe the center of the center. So a lot of these things can start to happen. There's lots of really fun stories, but I mean, it's kind of nonsense stories. They're true. I mean, these things happen, but you know, you don't want to get distracted by it, or you know, psychic powers are not the goal. And the teachers teach you how to use it in the correct way. So sometimes they do healing things and.
You say you
Yes.
So, how does that...
We're out of time, so just bring it in, condense it to one sentence. Your question?
Okay, so it's, with that background, how do you assess something like psychic powers?
You worry about that when it happens. Yeah.
When you get there.
Okay.
And don't dabble. Don't. These things do start to occur. Don't dabble. Get a teacher. You want to avoid it. Go for the purification of consciousness. One thing is, supposedly, not my own experience, but the deva beings that are near our level of consciousness usually are unpleasant, and they're there to trick you and cause you problems. So you have to refine your consciousness up to the higher realms where you only have good beings. So if you start to break out into these things, you don't want to get involved with this stuff. That's as best as I know, not having personal experience. I did say to my teacher, I went to live in the forest up by a graveyard, and he said, "What are you going to do about the ghosts?" And I said, "Oh, for God's sake." I said, "Ghosts never bothered me. Like, they'd never touched me, harmed me. I'm afraid of ghosts. I'm ashamed to admit I am afraid of ghosts. But I know that fear is me, it's not them. So I said, they can't affect you. And he said, no, they can affect your mind. Like, well, let them affect my mind. I think, sure, my mind will have a worse effect on them than they'll have on me. Anyway, we're done for time. So